And so he knew because of that, the competition was rising.
Yeah.
His profits were going to shrink. So I think he said his profits shrunk in half over a year. But because he was saving in Bitcoin, his purchasing power continued to grow. He was able to continue his business. And so when we look at that, we look at businesses, we just think this is a great opportunity as we go into a new administration that is more, I will say, crypto friendly, because they are crypto friendly, but Bitcoin and the impact that they can have.
Joe McGee, co-CEO from Sovereign. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I really do think that you are a rising star in the Bitcoin community. And I think, you look what happened with a lot of other podcasters, like Robin Sayre and Natalie Brunell and others who kind of started and did their thing and now become like household names in the Bitcoin community. I think you're well on your way to the same. I think next year at this time, you'll probably be leading a lot of these conversations and being a headliner a lot of these Bitcoin conferences as well. So thank you for having me. So Joe McGee, I just recently retired from the U.S. military in the Army. Spent about 20 years serving our country, and it was a unique experience. I learned a lot. I think Bitcoin has shaped the way I view things when it comes to the military. I would say I probably was, before Bitcoin, kind of believed everything I heard, and read everything I read and heard, and trusted everything I read and heard. And then I learned about Bitcoin and some of the issues fiat brings to not only just daily life, but world politics, economics, and wars. I mean, the forever wars, as they seem to be called these days. 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq and all those others. So it really shaped my mindset on life and how we live and the economics and just kind of why things are the way they are. So that was a big change in my perspective. Married, my beautiful wife Susan. She is definitely the brains and beauty of this operation. She is a very talented nurse practitioner, and just a wonderful mother and wife who I love dearly. And then we have 3 girls, 16, 15, and 11. All of them are they're just amazing kids. They get it from their mom. The brains, the beauty, the athletics. My 2 oldest ones play soccer or football, depending on what country they're listening from. And my youngest, who's 11, she actually dislikes soccer, football, because we dragged her to all those events where she was either freezing or sweating because it was so hot or so cold. So she does indoor sport, gymnastics. So she's doing very well at that and kind of creating her own niche in the family. Currently live in Kentucky, close to, for those gold bugs out there, close to Fort Knox. That's kind of close to where I'm at. So I think a lot of Bitcoiners find it interesting when I talk to them that I actually live near Fort Knox. But
totally.
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool thing. But yeah, I got into Bitcoin. And we started Sovereign shortly after I retired with my partner Daniel Frank, who's in Denmark, for those listening. And we're just trying to grow this out. We're trying to grow a business that really, and we'll talk more about this later, I'm sure, but we really want to help businesses adopt Bitcoin. There's a lot of people who help with individuals, like Bitcoin Mentor, Bitcoin Well, or Bitcoin Way. I mean, I could name Bitcoin Advisor, a lot of great companies, and individuals who are just doing it on their own. But with the growth of Bitcoin, particularly after Donald Trump got reelected, and the talk of potential strategic reserve, states are introducing bills to buy the country. You see MicroStrategy, like every week seems to be buying. Like, I think it's a 4-year plan they're executing in like 6 months.
Fast track.
So with the company corporation adoption, We just think that the natural evolution of things is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to be an exciting opportunity for business owners, primarily small and medium-sized enterprises, to help them beat inflation and kind of stay afloat and grow their company instead of just always on the defense, trying to fight, support their family, support their company with in the face of inflation, which is
Yep, most
difficult for a lot of
definitely.
people. Yeah. So
Yep,
that's about it.
that's a lot. A lot. We've got so many avenues to explore, but I would
Yeah.
like to say, mad respect to your wife because 3 kids,
Yes.
3 pregnancies, not easy. And so I salute your wife big time.
Yes. Yeah. I've done and seen a lot of things in the military, and I do not think I would ever want to face the. Let's put it this way: if we had to have babies, if I had to have the baby, we wouldn't have any. So
Yeah.
more power to her.
Yeah, most definitely. And I listened to your interview on an ESPN radio station.
Yes.
And I thought, like you said, you live in Kentucky, close to Fort Knox. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is quite incredible.
Yeah.
And you have a military background. Can you share with me how you discovered Bitcoin?
Sure. So this might sound a little different because a lot of people I've talked to had someone who kind of guided them along or introduced Bitcoin to them, whether it's a podcaster or a friend. I would say that I did not have that. This is might sound a little weird. I came home one day and I heard about Bitcoin mining, and it was one of those things. If you don't understand it, it doesn't compute. Like, are these people? I don't get it. Like, I think of mining, digging for gold, right? I don't.
Yeah,
I,
exactly. Yep.
I so so then so I ignored it, and then like I was like, I have the internet. I have the world at my hands where I can do my own research. So there's really no excuse for me not, like, at least getting a base level knowledge of Bitcoin. Like, I keep hearing about it. I see what's going with the price, and me saying I don't get it doesn't, like, why? Okay, then learn it. And so I just started researching it, started studying it, what started online. Obviously, like most people, went to Saifedean Ammous, his book, Bitcoin Standard, um, various other articles and research topics, and then Fiat Standard. And
Hmm.
I mean, I could go on, like the price of tomorrow, or the cost of Jeff Booth's book.
Yep. The price of tomorrow.
Yep.
Yep.
Check your financial privilege, broken money. I mean, I could go on and on. Like, I feel like every book I read was about Bitcoin, and I've sinned like most, and was looking at other cryptos as well, trying to figure this out. Like, until I fully
Yep.
understood that, like, there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else, right? And I just, it kind of took off from there. And I think a lot of that, as I started to study it more, to tie this into my military experience, um, having been in Iraq and seeing the absolute destruction that was going on in the country, the people, the Iraqi people, despite what would be said online or whatever, if you're a propagandist
Yeah.
or whatever, the average individual citizen in those towns we were at, and they just want to raise their family. They
Yep.
wanted to have a life. They wanted to, just like any parent, you want to take care of your children. You want to provide for them. You want to
Yeah.
feed them. And they didn't really have much of an option. I mean, there was nothing there. And because it was all destroyed, right? There weren't opportunities. So imagine trying to start your own business, or, you know, uh, have a job when there are no jobs. There's no business owners. If you try to set something up, you don't even have, running water and electricity to even begin with, right? And so then when we would try to help them uh, rebuild their communities, that money was quickly confiscated by bad actors. Um,
Yeah.
any construction that was done was, taken down, or, you know, or rebombed, depending on what was going on, or homes were used as hiding spots, or whatever the case was, right? And so when I looked at that, and I looked at the unbanked, uh, and I looked at, like, the ability to hope and save for your future, and build something that your family can have, and kind of, what can I do to secure the rest of their lives? I mean, I think every parent, when you have a child, whether you initially think this or if you kind of learn this with age, like you start thinking, okay, when I'm gone,
Yeah.
how do I make sure that they're provided for? I mean, yes, obviously we want them to get great education, get a great career, whether it's start their own business, entrepreneur, or, work for as a doctor, nurse, whatever the case is. But these are things you think about. And then, you know, I look back at those families and you befriended many of them because you realized the humanity that was there. And those fiat wars, I mean, the more you look back and you learn about kind of how we got into that, and you know, it's terrible. And so when I looked at that, I looked at the unbanked. I realized, in the West, in the U.S. especially, right, almost everyone has a bank account,
Yeah.
and they can save. And it's not, even though it may not be able to save or invest enough to really help them, because there is, issues with how much people make. There's a big disparity between the rich and the poor, and people trying to make it day to day, especially with inflation. But there's other parts of the world that don't even have banks. They don't have a secure method to transact. They can't just, and there's always those stories of, putting money under your bed, under your mattress to save instead of putting it in banks. If you put money under your mattress in some of these countries, it's going to get taken pretty quickly. And then it's also going to be inflated to be worth nothing. So having a savings technology, a means of transaction, a peer-to-peer transaction method with Bitcoin, and what that can mean for the world, not just as a savings technology in the U.S. or a
Yeah.
strategic reserve, but as a means to transact and take a lot of this, corruption out of money. That really, when you tie it into the military, what I saw, I think is huge. I think there's so many things that we can do. And, Max Kaiser, I think he said it best, is like a bloodless revolution. Like you can't just, like, throughout history, if I wanted your gold, we could come to your country, take over, take your gold, and now your gold is ours. Like I've confiscated it, right? Well, like you can't necessarily do that with Bitcoin, right? You have to do nice things for people to give you their Bitcoin. And so
Yeah.
I think it encourages a lot of, I don't know, partnerships, relationship building, as opposed to just straight out, like, going to war to steal things and confiscate things. Now, there will probably always be war. There's always going to be bad actors. So I'm not saying Bitcoin will get rid of that. But I think it is an avenue where we can build relationships locally and then also globally, on a sound money. So
Yeah. I mentioned this when Ed was on the podcast, but I heard a clip of Cynthia Loomis talking about, like a race to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible, as opposed to like, kinetic conflict. And so I thought that that was quite remarkable. I get the impression from a total outsider looking at the US through news articles and on social media that there's this type of transformation that's happening. People, it's almost like an awakening. I don't want to sound cheesy. I know people have referred to this or used this term before, but it kind of feels like that's what's happening.
yeah, I think so. I feel that people are tired of just being lied to.
Hmm.
Um, Now, this isn't necessarily, this is not picking a political side, Democrats or Republicans. I think people just, and like I said before, want to live their life. So they want to, hey, just quit lying to me. Quit just taking my money and wasting it on whatever. Quit wasting it on, on projects that do not accomplish anything. Like Saifedean talks about in his book, in Bitcoin Standard and in Fiat Standard. If you look back in history, when things were built, they were built to last and
Yeah.
for their beauty, their architecture. They've taken a while to build, but they're high quality and they last for years and years and years. Now everything is very expensive, but it's built to like break down so that you can repair it and more money goes into the construction system or to building homes, and you have to always replace stuff. It's very cheap, just like the food, especially in the US. processed foods is so cheap, and you get told that this is normal, that this is okay. You know, inflation is okay. It's a good thing. So, and as you look at the price of, you look at as productivity has raised like 80% since like 1970, but your actual take home income has only like increased like 1%. Like something's wrong there. And so when you look at that, you look at the price of things, you look at why are we doing these things that lead to nowhere. One of the things I'm actually very interested to see with, it's oddly named Doge, but the Department of Government
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Elon is
They're
slick.
yeah, they're releasing like some of the projects that we're spending like millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on, like research on, I think it was, and don't quote me, but like I'm paraphrasing obviously, like how rats react to how aggressive rats react to taking drugs. Like who cares? Like why are we like why are we
Okay.
spending $100 million on that? Like so and it just goes to other things. I think a lot of waste is going on because if you solve a problem, like Seyfedin says, if you are solving problems, then there's no incentive to keep funding them because you've solved the problem. So instead of having funding projects that work and they're complete, it's, well, we haven't solved this problem, but if for another 200 million over the next 2 years, we can make more progress, and then they don't ever make any progress, right? But we keep being taxed away at it. And I would say the same thing for, and this is not saying in favor of a war or not in favor of a war or anything like that, but you look at these wars and they keep funding them, whether it was Afghanistan, Iraq, Ukraine, is it Israel and all that. So you continue to fund wars, and they pass the bills to pay for them. Keep in mind we're like $35 trillion in debt. But we keep passing these bills to fund these. Well, where do they and people are happy, but they didn't know where that money's coming from. Like it's inflating, and while you think it's no big deal, the money's just coming out and going to these countries for whether it's war or whatever. The dollar is just being devalued. So like I would ask, if every time we passed a bill to send billions of dollars somewhere, what if instead of you just cheering it on, what if there was on your check when it shows like all your deductions, there was this forever war tax that came out, and it's you just lost another $100 a week because you got to support people would be up in arms. They'd be like, no, I'm not paying for this. Why are we like, hey, we need to solve this and settle this now, instead of just accepting that here we are 20 years later and we
Yep.
finally pull out of Afghanistan or whatever the case is. So it is, I think there is kind of an awakening. I don't necessarily think that either side, right or left, is like saints and all this. Like there's, if they say two wings of the same bird.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so I think but the population as a whole is kind of tired of being lied to. More and more, as you can see with social media, that videos, recordings, and outreach instantly to people are kind of, I think it's shaking up some of the older class, because if you look at our
Especially in Europe.
yeah, I mean, look at
They
the,
are livid with Elon Musk, and it's like, oh, really? Yeah.
well, if you look at like most politicians, they're like very old because they can stay in forever. And so I think the tricks that worked in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where you just, don't look that way, it's not happening, and people are like, oh, okay. Like now there's video, there's testimony that's coming out immediately that's access to everyone's fingertips. And I think they're having a hard time just adjusting to that and saying, hey, like our old ways of just, you know, shut up and listen to me. I'm your elected representative. I'm gonna do what's best for you. That's not the case. Like I think there may be some good ones, but I think the vast majority are busy just raising money for the next election and not trying to, anger any powers within their own party. I mean, look how they vote. Like if you have a bill, if there's 200, if there's 500 people voting, 250 will vote for their side, the other 250 will vote no, and it's right. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So I think people are just tired of it and want to just do things that make sense. Like let's
Definitely.
let's put our money in places to help people, make a difference. Let's solve problems. Let's not just continue to, fund things that never accomplish anything. And let's do the right thing for the country, other countries, and for people in general. I mean, from the very bottom income to whatever. Like, let's give everyone a fighting chance to survive out
Yeah.
there.
They can't capitalize on information asymmetry anymore. Like that game is over and
Yeah.
it's not coming back. Not with
No.
communication, not with decentralized money, not with decentralized protocols. But like sort of a teaser question for you. Do you think Trump or anyone within his team has read the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean?
I I would say people within his team and probably his family, I would say yes. Um, I I do not know, or I do not know if he's ever read it. I'm sure he's got. I know he's extremely busy, right?
Of
So
course, yeah.
somebody maybe give.
That makes sense.
Yeah, my guess would be somebody briefed him on it. I mean, the Bitcoin magazine guys are with him constantly, and uh, from what I understand, his sons are very knowledgeable about it. So I would imagine they gave him kind of like the Cliff Notes version of what it is, how it can help. Because for him to take a shift from where he was, I think in 2018, 2019, where he wasn't in favor of it, to where he's at with it now, I think he's got enough information that he knows surface level and what it can do to help the country. Um, I would say he probably doesn't know it as well as, and if you heard him talk about it, like I think it's just very surface level understanding. But I am hoping, especially with RFK Jr. in there, and if his sons are as knowledgeable about this as well, and then a lot of smart people talk to him and continue to show how Bitcoin can not just help the United States but globally, and how, if you look at this from even military perspective, you know, the U.S. being a leader in Bitcoin, to include mining, um, securing and storing and holding Bitcoin, I think that is important because, and I think this is where he's at with this, because I don't think it's going to replace the dollar, which I don't think he would let happen. I think he wants to use it to help strengthen the dollar.
Hmm.
And I think that and this can be said for AI as well, and I didn't say this, I think this is maybe Elon Musk or somebody else, but when he was talking about AI, there's a lot of potential issues that can result from AI down the road with advanced, as we continue to advance and grows. So you can either support the technology being built in the US, or, with AI, or you let your competitors take the lead, and then you're playing catch up. I would say the same thing for Bitcoin. You can either be a leader in this space, or in 5-10 years, you are completely behind and you're trying to play catch up to the rest of the world. So I think it's important. I think I've heard him say, and I'm not quoting him, but somebody who had talked to him, I can't remember the podcast I was listening to, where he said it's he either told somebody that it's potentially Bitcoin is like the next oil. If you
Oh,
control the
I
oil,
heard that. Yeah.
yeah. So if that's the case, I mean, and you see what oil does and how that drives competition and power within the world, I think Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network, I think we've only scratched the surface of what Bitcoin can do and the impact it's going to have on the world.
So, from a military perspective, another field where I
Yeah.
know like nothing, is it unreasonable or is it feasible for the US or any country with a military to allocate military resources towards, I don't know, like ensuring that keys are properly stored or like another branch of cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think, and this is my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of the U.S.
Of course.
military, right?
Of course.
But, but I think there's a lot to be said when it comes to securing the network and helping to ensure that it is as we get into quantum computing and other things that are coming down the line, if you look at that from a cybersecurity aspect, and if we do go into some kind of strategic reserve, it is very much, I would think, in everyone's interest to ensure that it is as robust network or security for that network as possible. And then I there is an interesting take on this, and if you look at, I haven't read all of Jason Lowery's book, but he talks about kind of soft war with owning
Yeah.
the hash net, the owning the network, and that I think that could be very important because if you look at that and what it could mean, again tying it back to oil, if you are the power player with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network, I think that could be, that could pretty much lead a country into an incredible status within the world because they own so much of that power and that energy. I mean, it could be incredible. And then Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he brought up something where, you know, how does the Bitcoin network evolve, which I found was interesting, and I'm not smart enough to, go down this rabbit hole, but he mentioned something like if you compare it to gunpowder, where in China it was first used as medicine, and then it was found out that what you could use gunpowder for, right? And it became like the biggest power projection platform in the world that basically, if you had this and you had the most of it, you controlled your fate and you controlled the world. Even Saifedean talked about it, where he said it's kind of like if you adopt gunpowder, you don't have a choice, right? Like there's
Yeah.
probably people who were happy with sticks and stones and spears, um, and then they were quickly taken over by the French army, right? And so like I'm very interested to see how this evolves over the next couple years, into kind of like a leading, I don't know, leading a country into one of the main world leaders in this, and how other countries follow suit and start adopting it as well.
Yeah. I feel, I think about, nation state adoption frequently. Definitely when El Salvador announced that it was legal tender and then they announced that they would start stacking, I was like super excited and stuff.
Yeah.
And after now, so a few years have elapsed, and I feel kind of torn because on the one hand, it's wonderful if nations really understand, the potential of Bitcoin. Obviously, I'm not going to pretend that price doesn't matter, but from a price perspective, my purchasing power will go through the roof
Hmm.
if I hadn't lost my keys in like Geneva,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I'm like, what if they understand it too well and they're able to impose limitations on regular people? And it's going back to what you were saying about your time in Iraq. Like you saw regular people, normal families, they just wanted the best for their children, the best for themselves. They're not thinking about some geopolitical play. They're just
Hmm.
living their lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the U.S., I forget the year, but basically confiscated all the gold. Like you had to turn it in and you get it back at a certain price. So I don't know if it's possible or impossible to do that in the future. So it's true. It is kind of a interesting take on it. What with government adoption and having, like, you see when governments have control of something, they don't necessarily want to let that go or reverse it.
Hmm.
So it is something that I feel is interesting. I What I think is, they could obviously block maybe exit ramps for you to like sell your Bitcoin if you were to ever sell it, or you could probably reduce the number of apps that are available on different, Apple or whatever system people use their apps or wallets. I just think that if you do that, you're gonna drive a lot of people in that technology somewhere else, whereas more accepted and more freely used. And that I think that at that point it becomes something that you're potentially hurting your own country, because then you're hurting innovation, you're hurting the best form of money, the best savings technology, and then again, depending on how this thing evolves, if it just stays as a HODL system or peer-to-peer transactions, or if it becomes something more, I think you're just hurting your own country. I would imagine there will be some countries out there that probably try to do something like that and might likely reverse that because of maybe an exodus of people or exodus of talent and innovation. It's not without outside of the realm of possibilities.
Definitely. So, shifting a little bit. So, the US seems to be on this like fast track towards some form of Bitcoin adoption, whereas in Europe, technically, I'm not in Europe. Switzerland is not part of the EU, but in Europe, the story seems to be kind of different. You, co-CEO, you're based in the US, Daniel's based in Europe. How did you guys meet, and what kind of conversations do you guys have? Like, how do you see things progressing for businesses in Europe and businesses in the US and abroad?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. So everyone who's probably listening has probably seen Bitcoiner Jobs and saw that website and probably looked around. And one day there was I think a post he put just looking for help. And so I clicked on it, played the video he had associated with it. He's like, hey, look, I'm building this company on how we can help businesses adopt Bitcoin. There's a lot of people out there who do individuals. Some have some part of that they can help with businesses. Like I know Bitcoin Mentor does have a business thing, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And but he wanted the niche to be Bitcoin for small, medium-sized enterprises. We're not trying to talk to big corporations. Like definitely not Michael Saylor. I'm not going to get 3 minutes with Microsoft. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But could we start like the grassroots and build up, and then the Michael Saylors and Bitcoin magazines of the world and Acropolis and other really talented people can work at the higher level, and maybe we meet at the middle over these next couple years, right? So that was kind of his vision and kind of what he wanted to do. But the plot twist was he couldn't pay me. And so I was like, sure, why not? Like, who doesn't like to work for free? So
Yeah.
but I believe in his vision. I believed in what he wanted to accomplish. He had spent a lot of time building the groundwork. It wasn't a finished product by any means, but I could see his vision and what he was trying to accomplish. And I really do believe in what he wants to do and what we're trying to do. And really our goal is it might sound crazy, but we're not in it to make money.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously something we want to do. But we're in it to save businesses. And that might sound crazy, but like I grew up around, like I could go down the street and I could shop at my local deli, or I could shop at
Yeah.
my local store. And all of those have been pretty much put out of business, and it's all, I can't speak for Europe or Switzerland, but like Walmart and Target and all these like giant corporation stores, and those small businesses are kind of, I mean, they're having a hard time surviving. Even a lot of coffee shops are replaced by like Starbucks and other Dunkin' Donuts and things like that. And so, and I think a lot of that is because businesses, they couldn't keep up with inflation. Like the same products or same ingredients that went into, whether you're a coffee shop, a pizza shop, or a small restaurant, the prices of those ingredients have grown exponentially over the last few years, and you're just not able to make it anymore. And so, and I look at that, and I look at somebody like Eric V. Stacks, right, who had his cannabis farm, and he was growing it, making good money. He started stacking Bitcoin, and then they passed the regulations in California to make it both, I think, legal for recreational use and medical use. And I'm sure there was something else with like getting land. It was quicker, easier, or whatever to grow. And so he knew, because of that, the competition was rising.
Yeah.
His profits were going to shrink. So I think he said, and I might be wrong, but I think he said his profits shrunk in half over a year. But because he was saving in Bitcoin, his purchasing power continued to grow. He was able to continue his business. I think eventually he sold it and now is doing basically consulting. But that's the idea, right? Like if you're able to save, even if it's, I think River put out a report if you had 3% of your savings in Bitcoin and the rest in cash, 97% cash, your purchasing power over the last 5 years grew by 7%. If
Yep.
you just had cash, it shrunk by, I think, 11 to 17%, depending on where you're at. And so, I mean, that's incredible, because I think a lot of businesses think, oh, I can't buy a whole Bitcoin, or I got to buy a whole Bitcoin, and what if it goes down, or all the volatility. But if you buy and hold, and if you dollar cost average in, unless you're like a big company that can just afford to go all in and start buying whole Bitcoins at a time, like, this is a good way to protect your wealth and for the long term. And so when we see that, and we see the disappearing of mom and pop shops, as we call them, and local stores, I think this is something that can really help save those people, and at the same time grow like the middle income uh, base, which is quickly becoming smaller and smaller. That rich, poor, middle class. That middle class is starting to shrink incredibly, and so I think a lot of that has to do with, it's not, a lot of these people are not even taking risks anymore, because
Yep.
the startup price is so much, and then the risk. I mean, it's not there. Like, how do you compete with a Walmart as a local deli? I mean, you probably have to charge more money because it's coming, you're funding it, right? And so you got to charge more money, whereas Walmart can get, buy by bulk and sell it to you for significantly reduced prices. And so when we look at that, we look at businesses, we just think this is a great opportunity to, help this next wave as we go into a new administration that is more, I will say, crypto friendly, because they are crypto friendly, but Bitcoin and the impact that can have. And this is another part, and me and Daniel talk about this all the time. Scammers, they've always been there, but they're going to come out in force, because you're introducing a large part of the population who has no exposure to crypto or no exposure to Bitcoin, and they can go in there, and it's hard to scam people with like traditional fiat like banks, right? Because like, oh, I got an email from somebody who says that, oh, send me your bank account and I get you this information or whatever. It doesn't have to be that way now. Now it's gonna be people who are, whether on social media or other forms, are gonna be like, oh yeah, I have Bitcoin. Just send me your money and I can send it to you directly. You don't have to worry about buying it from an exchange or whatever, right? And so they're gonna scam these people who think they're getting in on the Bitcoin wave, or they think they're getting in some kind of crypto. And people are clever. They can do it online. They can pretend to be help desk. They can be like, oh, I am from X company's customer support. I see you're having some issues. Okay, send me your keys to your wallet and I'll be able to fix the issue for you. And people are like, okay, because it's gonna look real on social media. It's gonna look like you're legit. And people are so clever these days.
Slight pause for a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever, ever send your keys to anyone under zero circumstances. Yeah. It could be the Pope asking for it. You say no.
Yes. What's it in God we trust and all others verify. So it's the same thing. And like you, I lost my keys in the ocean.
Yeah.
So my wallet is somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic. So don't worry, I don't have any Bitcoin next to this. But yeah.
Sorry, what you were saying about small businesses and mom and pop shops competing with Walmart, it hits like so close to home. And it is true. Like, if you have a small business, there is no way you're going to be able to get cheap capital the way a large enterprise can. Walmart probably can borrow money for like 0% interest. You're never going to get that. You don't have the scale. You don't have the volume. And I know of quite a few people who would love to start their own business selling their crafts or their food, for example, but they don't have the capital to start, and they know that the competition, like the odds are stacked against them. So they just work their corporate regular job. They're so frustrated. They're not happy. And so, giving that hope and inspiring them and saying, like, it's not going to be easy, but if you incorporate Bitcoin into your flow somewhere, somehow, it can give you a little bit of an advantage. And you're also then going to benefit on the same system that, is unfair to you in this circumstance. When they start buying Bitcoin, your purchasing power will go up as well. So it is something that, I hope a lot of small to mid-sized businesses start to consider and think about so that they can continue their operations.
Oh yeah, and if you, Russell Okung, he's I think the first athlete to be paid in Bitcoin. He's since retired, but he's been leading the way in pay me in Bitcoin. If you look at that and like his message is, these athletes, they have a certain window of time that they make money because of
Yeah.
it, right? And some of them, especially if you're college athletes, where you can get paid now in U.S. at least, college athletes can get paid in name, image, and likeness deals. A lot of those athletes will never make the pros, but they can, benefit from earning their income. And so you're going to have people who are coming up to him and say, hey, this would be a great investment to, purchase land in my real estate company, or to, get in on this next big thing, instead of, and scamming them, right? Because they're a young person coming into a lot of
Yep.
money unexpectedly. Or you could just, like Russell, you could get Bitcoin, save in Bitcoin, and over the years watch your wealth grow. And I think he famously, I think it was an article, his contract has like gone up like 3 or 4 times what it originally was. Odell Beckham Jr., who a few years ago they were calling him stupid for taking a contract in Bitcoin when it was at like 65,000, and it dropped to 16. And they're like, oh, he just lost almost all of his money, and then 100,000. So I think he put a screenshot up like, well, who's stupid now?
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, but I'm 100% agreement with you.
Yeah, it's I feel like there's a whole other podcast episode that could be just dedicated to athletes and financial management and fundamentals and learning because okay, another sort of area of ignorance for me. I know very little about American football or
Hmm.
football.
Yeah.
So I've heard of Russell Okong through
Yeah.
Bitcoin. I've heard of some of the like bigger football stars because, like I guess everyone knows who Tom Brady is.
Yeah.
But for like your average football player, I really don't know what their journey is. But if it's anything like some of the basketball players that I know of,
Hmm.
a lot of them, after they stop playing, they run into financial issues.
Yep. That's the same thing. And that's one of the things that Russell talks about is, that they talk about athletes who go broke after they get out. One, they have a hard time adjusting from, you've basically been a star athlete, doing a very structured life, and then you come out of that and you're like thrown out to the world. And then if you weren't great with your money, if you're constantly spending it, your ability to earn income is tough, is very difficult.
Yeah.
And so it's exactly the same. I mean, you say same thing with football. I'm sure it's quite similar to the rest of the world, football or soccer.
Yeah.
I think I mean, there's for every like Neymar and Messi and Ronaldo, there's just regular people who play, like regular athletes, great athletes, but they don't make the money that they do, right? And so, how do you do that? How do you protect your wealth for the long run, so that when you're 35 years old and you're retired from professional
That's so
sports?
young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a great, and I think if you have a chance to do a podcast with Russell Okung, I
Oh, I would
definitely
love that.
recommend it. And I'll
Yeah.
try to reach out for him and ask if he would do it, because we had talked to him a while back because we helped sponsor his Bitball. We 200 kids. We paid for 200 kids and their meals to attend his flag
Nice.
football at Bitball. So that was pretty cool. But here's the thing about him, right? One, I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. He's just a tremendous person. He he was only going to give us 20 minutes, and he talked to us for like an hour and a half, and just gave us like a master class on athletes, money, like how it works, what it's like in the locker room, what it's like before, during, and after, and families, because families are a part of the decision with these young athletes. Incredibly gracious, I could not believe he gave us that much time. So like, if you ever get an opportunity, and I'll try my best because I think you'd do great on here with in his perspective. I think it'd be great. And like one of the things that I find extremely interesting when it comes to athletes, if you look at, and I'll just take it to the U.S. I would say, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm willing to bet the vast majority of, whether it's Major League Soccer or the level USL, and also the women's National Women's Soccer League, I'd be willing to bet the more than half of the athletes are from South America, Central America,
Oh, okay.
Africa, or other parts of the world, right? And so when you look at the ability to send money, and these are young athletes, right? So
Yep.
keep in mind, so the ability for them to send money home using Bitcoin, as opposed to maybe they're going to Western Union or doing something and they have to pay all these fees and hope their family can go pick up the money, or all the ability to send Bitcoin home and help really build wealth for their family. And in some cases, like we talked about, how easily it is to be your money stolen or confiscated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, over with Bitcoin, like that could be an absolute game changer for a lot of these athletes if that is either built into their contracts, or they have, let's say, a sports team or an organization has like a Bitcoin, advisor, the same way as a
Yep.
financial advisor who can help guide them through trusted places to buy and how to send it and how to, secure and store. I think that would be absolutely incredible.
That would make such a big difference,
Oh yeah.
lowering the time preference and everything. Because the other thing I read, so I don't know this firsthand, but I read that a lot of athletes fall into the trap, like you said, like they spend a lot of money, very high time preference behaviors, going to the club, having multiple girlfriends and, financing that way of life and all the rest of that stuff, social media. So it's like it is the practical stuff when it comes to Bitcoin, but also the mindset shift so that you can actually preserve your wealth, because you can still spend your Bitcoin, right? But the
Yeah.
point is to like preserve it for the next generations to come.
Yeah, I think, I think about this, and yes, that is like the how athletes. I'm not gonna say all of them, right? But it's how, like, that's the image, at least, is how they do this. But like, I think about it. If I was 20 years old, 18 years old, 19 years old, 21 years old, and I came into millions of dollars, like I wouldn't know how I would act, right?
Oh,
Like
totally. Yeah.
I make fun of I tease my daughter because anytime she gets any money, she wants to go to like the store and buy a new shirt or new pants or new shoes. Now, upscale that to like $20 million.
Yeah,
You're kind of like, oh yeah, let's buy this new house and this new car, and so I, that is
that's
kind of
so
what it
true.
is. But like, I don't know how I would act in the same way, and unless I had either someone or an organization, or if my family would be there to like help guide me. And so I don't know. Although, sometimes I wish, give me the opportunity. Like,
Yeah.
give, give me $20 million
Test
and
me,
I'll
Lord.
let you
Test
know.
me.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm, I'm, I'm here to be tested. So we'll see.
That is so real. Well, Joe, thank you so much for this discussion. Can
Yeah.
you let everyone know, so where to find Sovereign, where to find you, where to find Daniel, your consultants, just everything for small, medium-sized businesses and athletes?
Sure. For on Twitter or X, I'm at Joe McGee _17. I just recently changed it, so that's why I let you know that I wasn't some scammer trying to hop in. Uh,
Yeah.
so just got that. My blue check mark's back after changing my name. So, and then Sovereign, it's at Sovereign X. Again on X. We're on all
And
the
you
social.
spell it in a special way too.
Yeah, it's a little twist. We had talked about that. Going back to, do we spell it the correct way, or the way I'm at? And so it's a little shift on Sovereign to kind of like if you look at Fiverr or Crumble and others that have just a slight change. What we're looking at is, this is a kind of a new way of doing business, and we're looking at, it's not completely different. It's not a radical change when it comes to saving money, building a treasury, payment rails, and all that. It's just a slight difference. It's a slight
Hmm.
difference because we're not replacing how you do business. We're incorporating Bitcoin for a better way to complement your business and not a radical change. And if you look at our website, it kind of says the same thing, because it's not a flashy website. It's not like, if you compare it to, I don't know, someone who buys Solana or has a Solana website or an Ethereum website with like crazy gadgets and Bored Ape Yacht Club like NFTs and pudgy penguins and all these different things. It is like classical art, classical design, because we really want to give the feel that we're part of something that's built to last, like Bitcoin. You are building something that is not just the here and now. It is something that we want in Bitcoin. We want to last the test of time. And if you've ever talked to Michael Saylor or listened to his speech, he talks about preservation of wealth. When he talks about Bitcoin, it's like it's the next 1,000 years or more, instead of 50 years for a piece of art or something like that. So you find us on SOVREIGN.io, a little different there. So you can find us there. We have all of our faces are on the website. So we're totally doxed. It has our LinkedIn, our X account, and we're there to help put you in the right hands, educate you, train you, teach your company, teach your business through workshops, webinars, one-on-one consultations, retainer consultations. We're working on a course that we're going to release here probably in February, mid-late February. And we have some webinars with some really talented people. One of them who, Ed, you've had him on. And then others who are just tremendously talented consultants, many of which are traditional finance consultants who've been working with small, medium-sized enterprises already. We have a couple guys in Canada. We have Owen Coles in Toronto. He's going to help put this together as well. And we'll be launching that so people can sign up, listen to the webinar, they can attend the course. And what we're really trying to do is, in this course, especially in the webinar, you can't really pay for information these days, or you can't really charge for information because it's all out there. But so we teach, and we're going to provide all of the business like templates that you can use, from your own strategy to crafting your own business strategy to your business plan to requests for funding to everything will be all available for people who join this course. So you're not just getting a course on what's Bitcoin, how can it help my business. You're also getting the templates and everything else that you can build yourself and access to. I want to say it's close to 50 different templates that you'll have access to. In addition to our ebook that we just released, and a new one is coming out here shortly with a custody chapter attached to it. And so we're here to help them, small, medium-sized enterprises. We can also help individuals. At this point, we're definitely open to helping individuals in their process. And yeah, we're here to help save businesses.
Very nice. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff to get in there. And I have to say that when I started to learn about Bitcoin, it took a lot of time and a lot of researching. Firstly, is this information worth spending my time on? So SOVREIGN's helping you just, shortcut. You don't have to go through the whole process of, will this lead me down to the crypto poop coin route, or is this legit Bitcoin? So that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that is probably it might sound crazy that we're not after your money to you're not buying Bitcoin from us. So we're not trying to convince you to buy from us. We're here to educate you. So I think that's a cool part. And I can't speak what it's like to buy a car in Switzerland or in Canada, but when we buy cars in the US, whenever I go to buy my car, I go to a dealership. They circle me like a bunch of vultures. They don't want to let me.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. We went a few weeks ago. Just after we come out of the gym, me and my wife. So I had shorts on and a t-shirt. It was so cold. And I was like, I really don't want to look. I'm freezing. She's like, we'll go. They said they have the car we were looking at, so we can just go see it, take a test drive. We'll do it indoors. So we go, we do it. Nice car, but we weren't ready to buy a car at this point. And as we were pulling out, the manager comes and knocks on our window and puts his hand on our doors and is trying to talk to us while we're trying to leave. And I was like, this is not awesome. This is not how I don't like to be treated that way. I don't like to be tried to convince me to buy anything, because as soon as it drives off that lot, they don't care what happens to that car.
Exactly.
They want my money whether I can afford it or not. Whereas us, we're not after your money. We're after your education and providing education, being a source of knowledge, putting you in the right hands with like River or Swan, right? Not some random company that stood up 2 weeks ago that says, oh yeah, give me your money and I'll secure it for you, right? And I think that's the fear we have as crypto and Bitcoin are in the news, that a lot of people are going to go online, they're going to search for how do we buy this, and it's going to come up with some scam artist who has paid to dominate, the search engines, and then they're just taking all those people money, like the next Sam Bankman-Fried, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is what we're trying to prevent. We were there to educate you, and when you're ready to buy, we help you. We hold your hand into River, or we hold your hand into Swan, or we hold your hand and help you set up, get you with CoinKite to buy a cold card, or any number of wallets, right? I mean, there's a lot of great wallets out there, and we help you set it up. We help you build your plan. We help you figure out how do you DCA. We talk about that and risk involved. And then we also have an accountant who will help you through all your tax questions. And so I think
that's amazing.
It's a great way. It's we're catching on. It's going to grow slowly but surely. I think in the next couple months, you're going to see a dramatic rise in smaller businesses and medium-sized coming in on this. So
I hope so. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for this interview.
Yeah, no problem. Say it. Thank you.
Keys. Yeah. Man like quakes. Man like who? Yeah. Takes her Bitcoin off exchanges under self-custody. She runs her own node, providing liquidity. Yeah, she got her own keys. She got her own keys. She got her own keys. Yeah, she got her own keys. 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 Yeah, she got her own keys.